Okay, good morning to everybody. It's wonderful to be back with you to continue our series, three-part series leading up to Purim, to enable us, like we mentioned last week, to try to experience a little bit deeper of the mitzvahs hayom of Purim, so that halacha should be what halacha was intended to be, which is halicha, or to walk with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to be able to really contact that deeper layer of existence every moment of our lives. We were just learning this morning with the Chevra, like I mentioned, I give shir early in the morning in Likutei Moharan, or Rabbi Nachman's primary sefer, and the tzaddik in Torah Ches, in the 8th lesson of that sefer, he says the most remarkable thing, which we were just learning this morning. He says that the Zohar Kadosh tells us that the gan that HaKadosh Baruch Hu placed within Eden, there was a garden in Eden, and the Zohar Kadosh says gan da'iraisa. This garden is a reference to the Torah. A garden is Torah. And the tzaddik says that we know, the pasuk tells us, Mayan yoytze me Eden lahashkes es hagan. There was a river that was flowing forth from Eden in order lahashkes es hagan, in order to water the garden. And just like the classic metaphor of watering a garden means that the garden depends on that water, and that if for some reason the water flow is cut off to the garden is dry, the garden is brittle, the garden dies, right? And that's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu set up the world. And everything that we experience in a physical realm is only a physical manifestation of spiritual principles and concepts. And so the Rebbe says, so what are we talking about? So the Gan is Torah, right? And that's what the Zohar Kadosh tells us. Where does the Mayan flow forth from? Where does it come from? It comes from Eden to water the Gan. What's Eden? So the Rebbe brings a pasuk in Yoel, where Yoel Hanavi tells us that Mayan mi beis Hashem yatza. Mi beis Hashem. The pasuk says that there was a river that flowed forth from the bayis of Hashem. Says Rabbi Nachman, the bayis of Hashem is tefillah. Ki beisi beis tefillah yakar l'chol ha'amim. Har bayis, and certainly the Beis HaMikdash, is associated with prayer. And in this very simple, it's 3 lines. The Rebbe basically gives over a whole theology of Judaism. We want our Torah, our Torah garden, our halacha to be alive, that it shouldn't be brittle, and it shouldn't die, and it shouldn't be stale. It should be full of vitality and life. It needs to be drawing on the consciousness of prayer, of tefillah, which is relational. It needs to be a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It needs to be seen in the context of an all-encompassing existential identification with our mission in this world as Jews, as neshamas. If a person is living a prayerful life, and a person focuses just as much on tefillah, and that experience, not just the Perish HaMilim, but the experience, the chavaya of tefillah, like the Nefesh HaChaim describes so beautifully in Sharbez. If a person's rooted in that place, so then Mayan Yotze Mibeis Hashem, right? And then there's a Nahar Yotze Me'eden Lahashkas Es Hagan. And then our experience of Torah is beautiful and lichtig. Incredible thing. And so that's what we're trying to accomplish here. We're learning about Torah, about mitzvahs, and about Purim, but we're davening that it should be mamash a prayerful experience. It should be with heart and soul. It should be like HaKadosh Baruch Hu intended it to be. Guf and neshama. The maisa with kavana. And that's our intention. Okay, so we carry on, and here today we're going to look at what looks like a very lengthy piece, because it's 2 sides of a page, but you'll see it flows very beautifully and nicely. And this is, I would say, more for spiritual value than, obviously there's Torah in it, but just to hear the tzaddik talk. Kedushas Levi is one of the rare Sfarim from the early Hasidim, which was actually written by the tzaddik himself. Many of the early Sfarim were written down by Talmidim. Sometimes, in the case of the Ishbitzer Rebbe, Mordechai Yosef Leiner of Ishbitz, who was one of the primary disciples of the Kotzker Rebbe before he broke off. In that case, Mea Shilach was printed by his grandchildren, right, based on teachings that had been passed along for 2 generations and then written down. So sometimes you have to be careful when you're learning the Sfarim. Of course, we respect and we value all the Sfarim are Kodesh Kodashim. But it's different when it's actually from the pen of the tzaddik. It's invested with a certain level of kedusha. It's invested with a certain level of dikonos and specificity, and you could be sure that what you're reading came from the source. Right? An interesting hybrid, by the way, once we were mentioning Likutei Moharan, is that this primary sefer of Rabbi Nachman was actually written, most of it, by Rabbi Nassan. It was Rabbi Nachman's Talmud, but every single word was overlooked by Rabbi Nachman. And so he saw every word and he approved it. So that's an interesting. But this comes from the Berditchever, and even at the end, we're going to see the Kedushas Levi reveals something very, I think, very tender and very personal. And so, to my knowledge, it might be one of 2 places in the entire Sefer where the Berditchever is revealing like almost an autobiographical anecdote, which I find very precious and dear. So let's begin. And the tzaddik says like this: now we're going to address and to discuss the reason for Matanos Lavyanim, this mitzvah on Purim, to give, even though it's always a mitzvah to give tzedakah, but specifically on Purim to give over Matanos Lavyanim. The Gam, and in discussing Matanos Lavyanim, Avar Tam, we're going to explain the reason Sha'amar Chachamenu Zal, that in two places the Gemara tells us, both in Megillah Daf Vav Amud Beis as well as on Daf Dalid, that Kriyas HaMegillah uMatanos Lavyanim Shaykh Hadadi. There's some kind of deep relationship between Kriyas and Megillah and Matanos Lavyanim, which is a strange thing because on the surface these are two independent mitzvahs. We learned from independent psukim, and what's the kasher? But we see the Gemara makes one contingent on the other. And the Gemara in Daf Dalid tells us very clearly that one of the reasons that we do not read Megillah on Shabbos, there are other reasons given, right? So we always say, Shema Yavar Dalad Amos Rosh Hashanah, a person's not gonna know how to read it properly, or gonna want to fix something, and he's gonna carry, right? And that's one of the reasons. But another one of the reasons that are given in the Gemara, fascinatingly, is that how could we make that Kriyas Megillah should be on Shabbos? What are the Aniyim gonna do? The Aniyim look forward to receiving their Matanos Lavyanim on Purim. And if we're going to have the reading on Shabbos, so then obviously we can't be giving tzedakah on Shabbos, and Aniyim are going to be cut off. And so for that reason, you see that there's a deep kesher, and the Gemara says in Adab Dalet, there's a deep kesher between the kriya of the Megillah and Matanos Lavyanim. What's the Penimiyus of that? What's the heart and soul of that? The Gam Amadaf Dalan Amad Beis, right? And so Vav is just an echo. We're not getting into the sugi now, but Vav is an echo. They're trying to find the Tana of a Mishnah, and they say, well, the Tana that talks about Matanos Lavyanim is actually the same Tana that talks about Kriyas Megillah, because they're the same thing, because they're contingent. But it comes from Daf Dalid, which we just mentioned, where the Gemara says explicitly that these two mitzvahs are bound up together. The Gam Amar, right? Daf Dalid Amad Beis, Mipnei she'eineihem shel aniyim tluyas b'mikra Megillah. Yeah.
So the prime reason is because you might carry them.
Yes, there are additional reasons. Yeah, I mean, there are different opinions. It's not main or different. There are different opinions that are listed in the Gemara, right? We see that these two things are contingent one upon the other, and they're connected. So what's the depth? So we're going to now explain the concept of Matanos Lavyanim Penimiyus. We already explained in another kuntris that's called Kedushas Chanukah, which, by the way, just historically, it's interesting to know that Kedushas Levi was originally the title for two very small pamphlets. One was called Kedushas Chanukah, one was called Kedushas Purim, and they were published first. And in the Sefer Kedushas Levi, like in Parashas Vayishlach or something, he quotes Kedushas Levi. And he's referring to the Kedushas, the Chanukah, and Purim that were printed as a separate thing. Then they were appended to the back. But that means that the Berditchever Rav felt that the heart and soul of his Torah revelations were in the Kedushas. And a lot of people don't know that. They learn, maybe they open it up, and learn a shtickle from here, a shtickle from there. If you want to really get the Berditchever's theology and methodology, it's in the Kedushas. Kedushas Chanukah and Kedushas Purim. Very important to know that. And it comes, in most editions, it's printed at the end of Kedushas Levi. See, he says over here, we already referenced Kedushas Chanukah Keish, Lamas Masigim Us Hashchina. There are worlds that are attaining the Me'ois Hashchina, or the Ma'oris, but it's not a misprint. So I don't know, maybe it's a misprint in the original. It doesn't say Ma'oris, it says Mara, yeah, maybe Marais. Marais Hashchina, right? The visions of the Shechina. There are worlds where things are revealed. Those are the upper worlds. Those are the realms in the spiritual realm beyond. The Gama Hava B'Yirla Boirin Niglim, and everything is clear. There's what's that? Ubam, yes, Ubam. Sorry, Ubam Ahava B'Yirla Boirin Niglim. In that realm, Ava and Yira for HaKadosh Baruch Hu are all that there is. It's just revealed. MS is clear. But we live in a world of nature. Umalchus and Istara, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu's sovereignty is hidden. And this that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running, every detail of existence, Mechusa, is concealed. Therefore, Mishtoikikim v'chafetzim lavedes Hashem Elokeinu, Hu Elokim Chayim, Amachayas Kol Ha'olamais, Me'olam HaKiseh Ad Olam HaTachton. And therefore, every particle of the physical realm, deep, subconsciously, sub-spiritually, is yearning for that Gilui, is yearning that it should also be part and parcel of the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence. Galus HaShechina means that the Shechina is mamish here, right? Because there's no objective shift that takes place. It's really subjective. If every human being were living as if this world was bursting with Elokus, the world would be bursting with Elokus. And it would have an impact on every single strata of human relationships, of geopolitical relationships. That would be Mashiach, right? That would be the Gilui, because it's really here. But the blockage is not from the standpoint of the Mashpia. The blockage is from the standpoint of the Makabel. That we subjectively don't approach the world with clarity because we have a Yetzer Hara and so on and so forth, and things are hidden. But the world itself yearns to be seen as a Gilui of Elokus. The Ruchnius within Teva, which we know that the whole world was created with the letters of the Torah, like the Gemara in Brachas tells us, but Salel knew how to put together the Mishkan, that the Zohar Kodesh says, Tziyur the Mashkana could Tziyur the Ma'aseh Bereishis, that the way that the Mishkan was arranged was a reflection, a microcosm of the whole entire existence. So Salel, in putting together the Mishkan, needed to know how to string together, and Rashi over there tells us, string together the letters in Sefer Yetzirah that tell us how the whole creation is literally built out of letters, like the Baal Tanya says in Shar Yichud Emunah, Parak Aleph and Parak Beis. The Tzaddik over there tells us, based on the Baal Shem Tov, La'olam Hashem dvarcha nitzav b'shamayim. He says, when you look up at the heavens, you shouldn't see a sky. You see the words Yehi Rakia. The letters that HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke are nitzav b'shamayim. La'olam Hashem dvarcha. God's words that Asar Ma'amaris are literally holding reality together in a very literal way. And so there are literal letters of Torah that are in everything. Also, the Ari HaKadosh famously brings, and the Tzaddikim will quote this from the Pasuk in Devarim, Ki le'al alechem levada yichya adam ki al moitzi pi Hashem yichya adam. It says the bread is not what's sustaining you. It's the letters of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that are in the bread, right? It's the chiyas, but it's letters. Ki al moitzi pi Hashem yichya adam. The letters lamed ches mem become lechem. That is the chiyas that's sustaining the neshama when a person is eating physical food. Al kapanim, there are letters in reality. And so he says, those letters, the spirituality within the world, hateva, of a nature, they yearn and they desire that a Kadosh Baruch Hu should be Nesgala, Hashem should be revealed, that everyone should serve Hashem properly. That's what the world wants. That's what nature wants. Just like a pauper is desperate that someone who has shefa should be able to give the person. That they should fulfill this person's lack. So in a certain sense, the physical world is a pauper. The physical world is lackluster. It lacks. It doesn't have that shine that it could have, and it's desperate that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should be megala himself, that Am Yisrael should stand with absolute clarity, and they should sing Shira every minute. Like the Baal Tanya says over there, that every single split second of the fact that the physical world is maintained, he says, is a greater miracle than Kriyas Yamsuf. He says this clear. He says the fact that there is an existence at all is much greater of a nace than Kriyas Yamsuf, because he says Kriyas Yamsuf was yesh miyesh. It was something that happened within something, but we're living right now. Like where we're standing and where we're living is yesh me'ayin. It's a nace, mind-blowing. But we get so used to it, we think, oh, this is normal. It's not normal. Where do you think the world is? The world is in the solar system. Where's the solar system? The Milky Way. Where is that? Where is this? Where are we physically? We don't know where we are. This whole thing is a mystery. The whole thing is an absolute mystery. We are in a spiritual realm. We just call it physical. Right? Meaning, where are we locationally? Like, where are we? We're nowhere. We're everywhere. We're ayin. We're yesh. We're mamish being brought into existence every split second. It's a nace of nisei nisim. Unbelievable nace. So that's what existence yearns for. And existence is like mamish, like a pauper. Asher because Hashem is hidden. Heima aniyim, that's the aspect of poverty. V'te'evim, they're yearning. She is gala ha'eres habayre lehe alehim. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the power behind all powers, should reveal himself. Because the Gemara in Nedarim tells us that the true impoverished person is not finances. That's not. The true impoverishment is an ani min hadas. Because if a person doesn't have das, meaning doesn't have a consciousness of a Kadosh Baruch Hu's presence, you could have all the money in the world, he's still a pauper. And lahepech, a person could really struggle physically, financially. But if a person has das, the Gemara Brachas tells us, Kilu nimna beis hamikdash b'yamav. It's like the beis hamikdash was built for that person. He's out of galus, so that person's free. That person lives b'simcha, ki b'simcha seitzeu. That person's out of exile, and a person has das, but it ain't ani element das. So says that Tzaddik V'ini B'Purim, on Purim, and this is what he had already explained in Kedusha Aleph, this is Kedusha Beis, Ayin Sham, Al Yidei Mikra Megillah Nisgala Ha'oros. And we learned this last week, that the reading of the Megillah is revealing incredible spiritual light and illuminations, Va'afilu B'Tiviyos, even within nature. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is revealing His presence even within nature, and that's of course the distinction between Chanukah and Purim. Chanukah is lamala min hateva, and Purim mechuseh. The whole Megillah, the whole thing is Esther. Everything's hidden. Hashem's name is not once in the Megillah. We already said last week. The whole thing looks like a total coincidence. Just don't happen to be. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is hidden, but it's revealing through the Megillah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is revealing energy within our experience. Kasher be'arnu, like he said, we had already explained. L'chein, therefore, zehu matanos levyonim. This is the depth of why we have a mitzvah on Purim of matanos levyonim koloimar, as if to say, shenitin levyonim heimat tevaim. We are giving to the Evyon. Who is the Evyon? Is literally all of nature. That's fundamentally devoid of a revelation of godliness every other day of the year. Asher hema aniyim, that they are impoverished with te'evim and yearning. She is gala and hagas hakelam al chusa v'ashala b'taycha. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu should be revealed within them. That Am Yisrael should wake up and they should see that there's no such thing as teva, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is all there is. That einoid movadoi. Achshav b'Purim, and that's what's happening. Noisin latva matana. So we give nature a gift. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence is being revealed. And it's coming through Purim that's happening as a miracle within nature. It says that's the yesod of Matanos le'evyonim, because that's a microcosmic representation in an interpersonal relationship of what's happening in the intrapersonal relationship between each human being and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or more accurately, between all of nature and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That nature is the ani, and on Purim, because it's a nes b'toich hateva, it's the giloy of matanas evyonim, right? Yes, matanas le'evyonim. The revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's matana within nature. But we already explained this revelation and the clarification of the spiritual that's being revealed within nature, so that we could literally see that nature has no life of its own. It's mamish Hashem's revelation is rak ayidei Torah mitzvah. It's going to only happen through Torah and mitzvah. Zois ha'ara nasa pu'ula ayidei kriya Megillah. And in a very specific way, it happens through the reading of the Megillah, Kasher be'arna b'kedusha rishona, as he had already explained at great length and in incredible depth in the first segment of the 4-part sections of Kedushas L'Purim. So he says that's the Penimiyus of what the Gemara is telling us. L'chein matanos levyonim u'kriyas Megillah talya ba'adadi. That's why these two mitzvahs are connected. Because how do you get to matanos levyonim? Right? Meaning, how do you get, in an existential sense, that the Evyon of Teva should receive its matana? The answer is Kriyas Megillah. Because the Megillah is literally bringing us to the consciousness, like we learned last week. It's not a story that happened a long time ago. We're living it now. Remember we learned, it has to be that we're living now. He says this incredible thing, the Giloy that's taking place within our hearts and minds, the Chizek Emunah, the consciousness that we remember, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is real, HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes care of us. There's not a thing that happens in this world that's without HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That happens through the reading of the Megillah, which is the story where that is literally communicated in the most clear and wondrous way. Memela, once that happens, Gevalt, Matanos Levyonim. So the whole nature receives its ha'ara, because Am Yisrael are awakened, and we leave shul. We should look at the world differently after the Megillah. The whole rest of the day should be different, because the Megillah is, again, it's trying to bring us into a certain consciousness. It's not an avodah that you just do, and as halacha says, and you tick it off the box. That's hakara Megillah l'mafreya. That's not re-experiencing the aura of the Megillah. But if a person re-experiences the aura of the Megillah, then Gevalt, there's a matanos levyonim that's taking place on a global level, on a nature level. So that's what it means that these two mitzvahs are connected one to the other. And that's really the Penimiyus of the actual terminology in the Gemara that says that we don't read the Megillah on Shabbos, because don't you know that Einehem shel aniyim are nesuim lemikra Megillah? What do those words mean on a literal level? that the eyes of the impoverished are lifted, meaning they're looking expectantly with yearning toward Mikra Megillah because they know that that's when there's Matanos Lavyanim. That's what it means on Pshat. That their eyes are upturned toward Mikra Megillah. See, he learns it much deeper. Pirish, you know what it means? The eyes of the impoverished. This is a reference again in a deeper way. Is a reference to all of nature that's yearning for the revelation of godliness within it. Shabam hanagasim mechusa, that usually HaKadosh Baruch Hu is hidden through nature. And they're aniyim. She'ein ani ala badas, like we said, they're lacking consciousness. Nisuim doesn't mean that they're dependent on, they're looking toward, they want, they desire. But nisuim, nature is elevated. Nisuim, all of nature is lifted. That is lifted up through Torah and mitzvahs, and therefore Lemikra Megillah. How do they get elevated? Mikra Megillah. See, he's learning it in a deeper way. Are nesuim. The eyes, we know that the eyes are always associated with das, right? But the Bekachne in Ishneim, the pasuk says, the eyes of Adam Mechaba opened up. Says Rashi, they were enlightened, right? But the Bekach, they realized they weren't wearing clothing. But it means that they came to a realization. The eyes of the Aniyim means the level of consciousness with which nature is usually approached is impoverished because people don't see HaKadosh Baruch Hu through Teva. A Ne'em Shal Aniyim. How do you elevate that consciousness within nature? Nesuim, we want to elevate it with Mikra Megillah. Through the reading of the Megillah. That the Mikra of the Megillah is channeling down Matanos Lev Yoinim. Because Matanos Lev Yoinim is Tali Mikra Megillah. This is the depth of that. Unbelievable. Through Mikra Megillah, the Tvaim are purified. This is what it means that they're lifted. Therefore, now we're going to read this very quickly because this is just such chizuk and cheva. We have to be learning Torah like this. I'm telling you, you have to. There's no other way to learn all the Gemara and Halacha in the world. We need the heart and soul of our tradition. I scream it until my throat is hoarse. My throat already is hoarse because all I do is scream this the whole entire day. We have to be giving this to our children in school. We have to be giving it to our teenagers in the Sifta. We have to be learning Penimiyus HaTorah. There's no other way today. Otherwise, our gan is beautiful and it's tons of flowers, but they're dry. They're dry. It's to be with chiyas, energy, love and awe and connection. Listen to these words of the Berditcher. What a Berditcher, what a tzaddik. You have to give Matanos Lavyanim on Purim with incredible joy and bechedva and with delight. Every day a person should be giving tzedakah. It's a beautiful thing. It's a mitzvah say d'oraisa b'sayach tiftach. But ayoyim b'yoyim Purim yesh l'smayach ad ma'od kishem mekayim Matanos Lavyanim. We have to rejoice infinitely. Ki kemoy shenois in ish Yisraeli tzedakah la'ani. A person comes, spielers come, they knock on your door, and you're giving them money. Means in that minute you're mashpia chesed. The midah of chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is neslabish in you in that moment. Kein goyrim sha'Hashem yizbarach neslabish as atzma b'minas hachesed u'mashpia b'chazel l'chol ha'srafim u'l'chol ha'flani ha'kodesh u'l'chol ha'oilamos u'l'chol ha'neshamos u'l'chol ha'cholos. You're causing in that moment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is neslabish of the midah of chesed and pouring forth shefa and spiritual life force and health and vitality and bounty and wealth and everything to all of the levels of the malachim, the srafim, the ifanim, and all the worlds and all the souls and all the chambers. Shefa rav with incredible bounty, v'sasin, v'simcha, l'chala olamais, l'olam ha'tachton, and everything is filled with a proliferation of joy. Chazal tell us, whoever has mercy on others, Hashem has mercy on him. The way that we act in this world, that's causing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is acting toward us. If we're doing chesed and we're acting with rachmanas, this is bringing down mamish all the energy from the higher realm. Skip a little bit because we're not going to have time to read the whole thing. So turn the page over. and start from V'loy dai. V'loy dai kishenishmasai oilo lamala kol hamalachim v'chol ha'oilamos v'chol neshamas. I'm sorry, hold on a second. Start a little bit further back, where he's speaking about the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu acts toward us. That Hashem is our tzel, sort of, is our shadow. And jump in just Kainhu at the end of the second line. Kainhu goyim sasim v'simcha chesed v'rachmim l'chol ha'olamos riva v'is olamos adding kates u'l'chol sarfei ha'kodesh u'l'chol chayis v'fani ha'kodesh. We're bringing down again tremendous joy and energy to all of the layers and to all the malachim. V'heichal v'aneshamos v'olam ha'tachtonim aleim kol ha'olamos ha'malachim v'aneshamos v'heichalos v'olam hazeh b'sasim v'simcha. The whole creation is filled with joy and celebration. And he says, fortunate is such a person and his soul. And it's not enough just what we said, but rather when our neshama after 120 will go up to the next world. The angels will all come out in droves. All the spiritual world will come out in droves. All of the souls will come out in droves, and they will hug and they will kiss your soul. Why? Because it was your soul that brought them joy. Because from your Matanos Lavyanim, on Purim, Tafshin Pei, whatever it is, whenever your person's giving Matanos Lavyanim, you trigger down Shefa that flowed on every level of existence. And they'll come back to you. I'm sorry, I just want to get as far as I can. We'll take a question afterwards. Myriads and malachim and srafim v'chayis v'fani hakodesh v'chol ha'oilamos v'chol ha'malachim, and all the realms and all the angels machrizim ufanav will make an announcement before you, and they'll say, Havu yikar l'diyukna l'planya. Come and give honor to the Diyukna of Ploini, the Abed Ru'usa de Mare, because he did the will of his creator, Benesinas Matanos Lavyanim. Imagine if we thought all about this. Someone comes, knocks on your door per morning, and you're conscious of this, and you recognize that right now, I'm not just fulfilling my mitzvah sayyim, which is deep enough. I'm taking money, I'm being mislabish of the midah of chesed, that's triggering in Shemayim the midah of chesed, and I'm giving it to the ani, and all of nature is the bechina of an ani, and it's desperate for HaKadosh Baruch Hu shefa, and I'm literally being ma'ir in this moment, mega doses of shefa to flow down upon all the worlds. And that's totally on Mikra Megillah, because that's literally what Purim is all about, is the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Matanos, meaning God's presence within Teva, within nature. So we don't have time now to go through the rest. Skip down all the way to the bottom. I just want to share with you what I found to be very tender and beautiful. We'll just go through the last paragraph. Fortunate is the person that gives Hashem nachas ruach. I'll call mitzvahs to be really joyous when you do mitzvahs. Specifically the mitzvah of tzedakah matanos lavyanim. To do it with joy, with cherishing it. And not to be stingy, especially if you're donating to Eilecha. No, I'm kidding. Not to be stingy, that's my organization. When a person's giving to paupers, if you trigger down Shefa to all the worlds, see, he says, for sure, whatever you give, you'll get back thousands of times. And he'll bless us like he told us he would. Because you're allowing for the proliferation of chesed. Especially since we explained, we cause Shefa Rav Ba'olam HaTeva. That's the Gilui of the Matana of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence with the nature of Ha'olam Hazeh, like we said. And then go down another line. He says, Raku Yimsa ba'ayin yafa. He says, no, give with an ayin yafa. We're above the bold. With a good heartedness. To the shliach who you're sending to give matanos lavyanim. And then he says, if a person still has young children, person is in a position to be mechanech, try to give that the children should be the ones who are giving the matanos lavyanim. And here he says, again, it's very tender. He says, I remember Kishayisi Katan. There's a B'ditchever saying, when you imagine the little child B'ditchever, how sweet he must have been. When I was a little boy, my father Meshaleach al Yadi He used me as the shliach to give Matanos Lavyadim. His father was a phenomenally wealthy man, or a mayor, was a huge ashir, huge gvir. He said he didn't send it with the servant, he sent it with me. And it was all done with joy. So this gives us a little bit of a deeper perspective what Matanos Lavyadim is and why it's Tali Amikra Megillah. We have to recognize we're not simply doing the mitzvah Sayyim of giving tzedakah. Tzedakah every day is precious, but there's something particularly connected to the inyan of Purim, which is the Gila of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence within nature, and that's the ultimate Matanos Lavyadim. And when we give Matanos Lavyadim on Purim, we are triggering and channeling down in that moment mega doses of ashpa, and like Rav Moshe Wolfson, Zatzal, said, and he named his sefer after this, but he quotes it again and again. He says, "V'haya emunas itecha." It's not enough to experience the times, the Yamim Tovim. You have to have emunah in the times. If we don't have emunah that these things are happening, it's going to be dead. But if a person has emunah that when you're doing this, you're causing the whole world to explode with gavalt. So how could you not do it with joy? How could you not do it with energy? How could you not do it with a full heart and gratitude? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bless us. And we're going to continue next week that we come into Purim with these ideas. We're a little bit more prepared. And there should be neshama in the guf. There should be water flowing down into the gan. And Hashem should bless us that in that merit we should be zeichet to meet and greet Mashiach Tzidkenu b'mheira b'yameinu. Amen. Thank you so much.